A celebration is being held for astronauts who will be leaving the following day on a mission to Mars. There is Nicholas. The only married couple participating in the mission is Woody and Terry. Sergey, Renee and Luke. They will travel in 2 groups. Luke is anticipating the arrival of Jim, another astronaut. Before leaving, his wife advises him to speak with his son Bobby. When Bobby hears Luke talking to him, he expresses his regret and asks who will read to him in Luke's absence. Everyone is delighted to see Jim again after the party when he arrives and joins the gathering. When Jim mentions a woman named Maggie, everyone in the group, including Woody and Luke, begins to feel incredibly depressed. Jim and Luke have a conversation in which it is revealed that Maggie is Jim's wife and an astronaut. Jim and Maggie have dedicated their entire lives to achieving their dream of visiting Mars. Jim left the Mars program to care for Maggie when the time came because she became ill. Maggie ultimately lost her life. Luke claims that Jim and Maggie are the only ones who truly deserve to visit Mars, and he is disappointed that they won't be able to. Luke, Renee, Sergey, and Nick team arrived on Mars 13 months later. After closer inspection, they discovered that one of their rovers had discovered an odd mountain with a shiny top. They believe it to be ice and speculate that there may be a large water reserve beneath the mountain. They deliver the message to Woody, Terry, Phil, and Jim on the World Space Station. As Luke and the crew arrived at the mountain, they informed the station that they would be leaving to investigate the mysterious mountain. In their headsets, they pick up a strange signal. The mountain is being studied using a radio wave radar, and the results indicate that metal, not ice, is underneath the dust. They should move the radar closer and use more power to get an accurate reading, Luke says, adding that there must be a mistake. As they proceed, a powerful energy pulse emanating from the mountain causes all of their instruments to malfunction. Then a terrible tornado starts to form. Every object in the tornado moves like it has consciousness. Sergey, Renee, and Nick are killed, but Luke is spared. Where the mountain once stood on the World Space Station, a massive metal face is revealed after the tornado has subsided. Due to the intense energy pulse from Mars being detected and the subsequent loss of nearly all transmissions, an emergency meeting is called. A barely functional video transmission is received, but it depicts a severely hurt Luke, indicating that something attacked his team and killed everyone on it. While Woody tries to persuade the World Space Station's captain to send a rescue mission for Luke, the captain claims that Luke may already be dead and that there is no way to know whether traveling to Mars is safe because all transmissions have stopped. The captain agrees with Phil when he says that they can gather data from a Saturn probe that is approaching Mars and plan their mission accordingly. Given that Jim has spent the most time preparing to go to Mars and that he and Maggie were responsible for creating all of the mission plans, Woody informs the captain that the mission will only be successful if Jim commands the ship. Initially hesitant, the captain eventually consents. The crew of Jim, Woody, Terry, and Phil is approaching Mars several months later. In a few hours, images from the Saturn probe depict 3 graves that are close to the previous team's base camp. Terry argues that this simply means there was nobody left to bury Luke, contrary to Phil's assumption that Luke is still alive. The location where the energy pulse originated is still emitting the same pulse when they look there. They believe there is a probe issue. Micrometeoroids begin striking their ship as they are getting ready to land on Mars, puncturing holes where the air begins to leak. With the team's assistance, Woody covers the holes on the inside and the outside. However, they are unaware that the meteoroids have harmed their fuel tanks as well. Fuel leaks out as they start to launch into Mars' atmosphere, and when they start the engine, there is an explosion that destroys their ship. They are forced to launch into space wearing nothing but their suits connected by tethers. They aim for a refueling module from earlier missions that is currently in orbit around Mars. They underestimated how far it was, so Woody decides to fly full speed at the refueling module and tie a grappling gun wire to it. He will do this by using all of the fuel in his jetpack. The remainder of the crew will now have a chance to get to the module without incident. When he tries the maneuver, he succeeds in tying the wire, but he overshoots and loses fuel in his jetpack, leaving him stranded in space. Terry is devastated and says they have to rescue Woody. However, neither Jim nor Woody has enough fuel in their jetpacks, so they are both aware that it is impossible. Terry still tries to save her, but advises her to turn around before she runs out of fuel and becomes stranded as well. She uses the grappling gun to try to get Woody back, but the wire is just barely too short to get to him. Terry promises to get closer and try once more. Woody understands she will commit suicide while attempting to save him, so he moves his helmet and makes a sacrifice to get her to stop. The refueling module was successfully landed on Mars by Jim, Terry, and Phil. They arrived at the previous mission's base camp. They find most of the equipment damaged but still reparable, which means they can go back home with it. Jim is shocked to discover that there are plants growing in the test greenhouse. Behind Jim, Luke appears and attacks him. Luke, who is in bad shape, thinks Jim is a hallucination, but Jim convinces him this is reality. Luke refocuses. He explains to them how he made it through a year by growing plants in the greenhouse. He describes the incident that resulted in the deaths of the other team members. Instead of claiming to have survived, he claims that there was a good reason why he was spared. He claims that he was kept alive to discover the secret. When Jim asks about the mystery Luke is referring to, Luke presents a picture of the enormous metal face. It turns out to be the well-known Martian face, which was previously seen from satellites but thought to be merely a mountain. According to Luke, someone put it there so they could see it. Jim asks about the signal Luke's team picked up when they were near the face. Luke explains that after a year of signal analysis, he has discovered that the physical dimensions of the signal's pattern formed a picture of a DNA. He claims that the beings who put the face there are taking a self-portrait, a statement of who they are, a signature. Terry notices that the DNA is missing the final pair of chromosomes, indicating that the organism is not human. Later, as they pack for the trip home, Jim makes a mess by spilling some candies. He realizes, from his conversation with Phil, that the DNA picture is a test, not a signature. The beings require them to complete the final pair of chromosomes in order to demonstrate their human status. The face attacked Luke's team as a result of their radar's radio waves being misinterpreted as the incorrect response to the test. Jim claims that in order to fill the final 2 chromosomes and provide the correct answer, they must reconfigure the radio waves from the radar. Jim persuades the rest of the team, who are hesitant, that if they don't do this, everyone who died would have been in vain, and the entire mission would have been for nothing. They use a rover to send the radar to the face in order to be safe. The radio wave that contains the solution to the DNA enigma is transmitted by them. A white doorway opens up in the face. Regardless of whether Jim, Terry, or Luke return, they tell Phil to fix the return journey module and to leave when he's finished. Period. Jim, Terry, and Luke enter the doorway of the face, and it closes behind them, cutting off radio communication with Phil. They take off their helmet after realizing that the air inside is breathable. They enter a 3D representation of the solar system. Mars appears as a blue and green planet in the solar system. It is narrating a tale. Mars once had a population, but it was destroyed when a meteor hit the planet. Luke, Terry, and Jim are still seeing the story as a thin red being emerges from behind them. The population of Mars left in space to live in others' galaxy, but one of the ship left behind and the Martians uploaded DNA information into it. The first single-cell organisms were transported to Earth by this ship. Over millions of years, those organisms eventually developed into modern humans. In fact, Mars is where life first evolved. In order for people from Earth to one day return and discover their origins, a face was placed on Mars. When they make radio contact with Phil again, he warns them that a storm is brewing and that they must head back to the module so that they can travel home. Jim notices that the face is actually a ship and that the countdown to takeoff has started. Terry and Luke start to leave, but Jim announces he will remain. He claims that everything up until this point has been an invitation for them to visit their Martian ancestors, and he will be going. He was destined to do it. Luke and Terry decided to let Jim go. Terry and Luke barely arrive at the return journey module in time. Jim is then lifted into a tiny ship and placed in a compartment. Jim becomes concerned as the compartment's water level starts to rise. He holds his breath but then notices he can breathe in the water as it rises all the way up. As he anticipates the journey to a new world, he experiences flashbacks of every moment of his life with his friends and his wife Maggie. Terry, Phil, and Luke saw Jim's ship fly by as it was transporting him to a different galaxy. Knowing that his friend is at last pursuing his destiny, Luke wishes Jim luck as he looks at the ship leaving for outer space.